The wind howled through the empty streets of the small town as the old widow stood in front of her cottage, clutching the tattered shawl tightly around her frail shoulders. It was the sheriff's demand for her to leave her home. She knew her only option was to refuse. He had no right to take her home. But the sheriff didn't care for her protests. He was a man of power, and he wasn't accustomed to being denied. What he didn't know was that the widow was as tough as the land she lived on. A lone cowboy on horseback, galloping toward her. He wasn't supposed to be there. He had heard the commotion from a distance and had rushed over to see what was happening. When he saw the widow struggling in the snow, he didn't hesitate. But as she looked into his eyes, she saw something real, something raw. She saw compassion in a world where she thought compassion was lost. But with the cowboy by her side, the widow began to feel something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. The horse's steady rhythm calmed her nerves as she buried her face into the cowboy. Say much during the ride, but the silence between them was comfortable and understanding. They spent the days in quiet companionship, and as time went on, the widow began to realize something. She was not just surviving anymore, she was living again. She had not felt this way in years, as if a spark of life had been reignited inside of her. She had been so used to being alone that she had forgotten what it felt like to be cared for. But now here was this stranger offering her something she had long given up hope of ever having again. He didn't need to say anything to make her feel safe. The cowboy helped her onto his horse, and with a steady hand, he guided the horse through the snowy terrain. He pulled his horse to a stop beside her and dismounted without a word. He had no idea who she was, but he knew what he saw: a woman in need, a woman being wronged. The cowboy didn't just save her from the cold. He saved her from the loneliness that had consumed her for so many years. To him, or she would be thrown out into the freezing night. She had been so alone for so long that the kindness of this stranger left her speechless. Her years of hard work and sacrifice seemed to count for nothing now. The widow had been alone since her husband's passing many years ago. Their house had once been filled with love and laughter, but now it stood silent in the harsh winds of a cruel world. She sat by the fire, her hands trembling as the warmth slowly began to seep into her frozen bones. The cowboy didn't leave her side. He made sure she had food and drink and made her comfortable in the cabin. She had no family, no one to turn to her. Only solace had been the land she inherited, a place full of memories she cherished more than anything. But now it seemed that the sheriff was determined to take it all from her. The sheriff had made it clear he wanted her gone, no matter the cost. She had nowhere to hide and nowhere to run. The freezing winds cut through her clothes as if they were made of paper, and her body trembled uncontrollably from the cold. He had threatened her before, but today he meant it. The sheriff's men didn't wait long. They forced her out of the cottage without a second thought. Her heart raced with panic as the cold air stung her skin. She was tossed out like a piece of trash into the unforgiving winter wilderness. Her feet barely touched the ground as they marched her away from the only home she had ever known. Her breath came in short gasps as she struggled to keep up. The world around her felt like it was closing in. She had nowhere to go and no one to turn to. Just as she thought she might collapse from the cold and despair, a figure appeared on the horizon. He offered her his hand without asking questions. His voice was calm but full of strength as he told her to climb onto his horse and that he would take her to safety. The widow didn't know what to think of the cowboy. She had never seen him before and had no idea why he was helping her. They rode for what felt like hours. The journey was difficult, the wind biting and relentless. As they reached a small cabin on the outskirts of town, the cowboy led the widow inside. It was warm inside, a stark contrast to the harsh cold outside. He sat across from her by the fire, his eyes studying her face, as if he were trying to read her soul. But the widow wasn't sure what to say. As the days passed, the cowboy continued to care for her, without asking for anything in return. One evening as they sat by the fire, the cowboy turned to her with a gentle look in his eyes. "You don't have to be alone anymore," he said quietly. The widow's heart swelled with emotion as the weight of his words settled over her. In that moment, the widow realized that life had a way of bringing people together when they least expected it. The widow smiled through her tears, knowing that this was the beginning of a new chapter in her life, one filled with love and hope once again.